speaker is Mr. Joseph Harmon. And I now invite him to proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, your accession to office as Speaker this afternoon will have caused some significant changes in my presentation. Since I was prepared to address Mr. Speaker. But be that as it may, Madam Speaker, I rise to make my contribution to this 2013 budget debate, a budget presented by Dr. Ashley Singh on behalf of the PBPC administration. Madam Speaker, I've heard an honorable member on the other side of the aisle state that the opposition has failed to pinpoint weaknesses in the budget and that no strong criticism of any of the measures have been made. This, Mr. Speaker, has been the fundamental problem of the PBPC over the last 2 decades. They have not been listening. The people spoke in 2011 and they are still not listening. You speak by yourself. Madam Speaker, this budget enjoins us to overcome challenges together while accelerating gains for Guyana. And in terms of a theme, in my respectful view, it represents a departure from the previous themes of remaining on course, staying steadfastly on course, and so on. Which course, of course, went off the rail a long time ago. This year, I was there in 1983. This year, we are told by the Dreamweaver to share the dream of the PPP for another 5 years.
Right.
Madam Speaker, this dream is 21 years too late. And the Guyanese people will not wait another day beyond the next elections to say to the PPC government that they have to deal with reality. Madam Speaker, the reality is that unemployment in Guyana is 12% or more. That among our young people, it is at least 25%. And among young women, it is even higher. We'll get over that. The reality is that violent crime and corruption, drugs and gun violence are now part and parcel of life in Guyana. The reality is that our young people cannot get employment while the government signs off on contracts which allow for foreign companies to operate in Guyana and not hire Guyanese labor. It is a reality, Madam Speaker, that the army of the poor is being swelled by unwilling volunteers, while the small group of friends and relatives of the regime become super wealthy. Mr. Speaker, we cannot afford another dream.
You're right.
The PPP dream has become a nightmare. But Mr. Speaker, we noted with a curious development in the speeches of my friends on the other side.
Which one?
Persons, specifically the Honorable Minister Mr. Irfan Ali.
He's absent.
We are now hearing of continued improvement and growth for the last 7 years. And I'm really sorry that the 2 gentlemen are not here. Because it seems as if this continued growth started immediately after the Honorable Minister became a minister. He became a minister in September of 2006, and all the growth started after that. Is this not an admission that all of those figures about growth and the rosy picture painted by previous finance ministers were all but fluff? Were all but fluff? 14 years before that, we had ministers, finance ministers such as Bharat Jagdeo, Asghar Ali, Sesnarain Haulasar. What were all of these people doing? giving us stuff. Giving us stuff. Now we hear that everything started 7 years ago, and everything is about 7 years, 7 years, 7 years. Everything is about 7 years. That's when everything, yes, figures started cooking in. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, the exhortations by the government to overcome challenges together appears to us to be no more than a slogan, as overcoming challenges together presupposes the need for partnership in overcoming these challenges. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we believe in partnerships. The name APNU is a partnership for national unity. The Alliance for Change is an alliance. So, both of these political organizations have embedded in their names. They have chosen a recognition that partnerships are essential to the growth and development of Guyana. But, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker,
That's true.
the record of our colleagues on the eastern side of the aisle over the last year clearly demonstrates that working together means doing things their way or no way. It is either their way or the highway. So, what did the nation hear coming from that side of the house? That we are a one-seat dictator. That the government will make our one-seat majority meaningless. That the president will not assent to any bills unless the government side of the house agrees with it. Madam Speaker, this aggressive, non-conciliatory tone has been exemplified, especially in the speech, the budget speech of the Honorable Minister of Finance, and more recently by his erstwhile junior minister, the Bishop Edgell. Honorable Member, Bishop Edgell, who, in my humble opinion, has done the greatest harm so far in this debate to any notion of working together by his bombastic presentation in the South last time. Happily, Madam Speaker, we detect from the presentations of many others on this side a desire to work together. But, Madam Speaker, our desire must not be to just work together just to get the budget passed in this House. The desire must be to work together for the good of Guyana. To give a good life to all Guyanese. So, Madam Speaker, this kind of rhetoric coming from the government has in large measure informed the actions when dealing with the opposition. Hence, Madam Speaker, the government that now seeks the opposition's support to overcoming challenges together, they are doing the following, some of these things. But even while this debate is going on, and even before we've had a consideration of the estimates, they've gone to meet stakeholders and all sorts of people that were spoken about by the Honorable Member Edgell last night. Again, stealing a march, or attempting to steal a march. But as my friends say, that's fluff. It's a PR exercise designed to create a favorable atmosphere for the reception of the budget.
Consulting with civil society stuff.
Mr. Speaker, if the government is so concerned about the involvement of citizens in this process, let them agree to put the big screens outside of the National Assembly so that the real stakeholders can see live the proceedings in this House. Let them go. That is NCN, NCN. Madam Speaker, this government has now asked that we work together as for the last year ignored the legitimate request of the leader of the opposition to pay the rent for the building in which his office resides. And to furnish it with items that were previously purchased and disposed of by this government in November 2011, only days before the elections. These are legitimate concerns. This is a right which is enshrined in the law, and yet we cannot get, after 1 year, a decision made to take those things into consideration. Madam Speaker, you cannot ask a partner in development to work together and you do not give him the resources with which he has to work and to which he is legally entitled. It's abuse. Thank you. But, Madam Speaker, in spite of this display of minority power, our members of parliament have sought and in some cases have been able to work with ministers of government on issues that affect the people of this great country. And I'm happy to see my friend, the Honorable Minister of Housing here. Because, Madam Speaker, I have had the opportunity of working with Minister Irfanali on several projects, and I must say that some of these projects have been successful. I must say that, and so I want to acknowledge that. In fact, on the 21st of February 2012, Minister Ali and I issued a joint statement itemizing some of the matters which we discussed and what we need to have done for the benefit of the Guyanese people. These discussions were not about the budget 2013. Madam Speaker, these discussions centered around the priority areas such as taking action on squatter regularization and relocation plan. We discussed and agreed on developmental information as it relates to new housing developments and expansion of housing developments. We discussed and agreed on a mechanism that will ensure that all the impediments that act as a barrier to regularization of the Angois Avenue area were removed. The issues of material shortages also we discussed, and the fact that some of the contractors who would actually complain to the leader of the opposition that they were being starved of resources, that we discussed that and we agreed to make a public statement about the use of stone and the use of cement, and we endorsed a statement made by the Honorable Minister of Natural Resources that these quarries had to extend their working hours to allow for stone to be given to all of the contractors. Madam Speaker, we have had some amount of cooperation and we believe that partnership is important.
No, we don't want that matter policy possible.
Madam Speaker, in my contribution to the debate in 2012, I said this. Mr. Speaker, like the Honorable Minister, we also believe that physical infrastructure plays an extremely pivotal role in transforming a country. However, where we parted company is in the methodology. We in the APNU believe, and we still do believe, that this pattern of development which sees large sums of money spent on projects which have the appearance of providing jobs for the selected group of persons. We believe that this sector is critical enough to demand a national conversation on the network of roads and bridges necessary to develop our hinterland. We believe that the talent for doing so resides right here in this country, and we should develop such a plan. Mr. Speaker, that was last year. And I repeat, and I rely on those sentiments which were expressed. But Mr. Speaker, I am not alone in this demand, Madam Speaker. I am not alone in this demand on the government. Only last week, Mr. Michael Correa, the chairman of the Oval Airport Inc., at a very beautiful ceremony held at Oval to mark the old airport certification as an international airport, said this to President Ramatar, who along with the Honorable Minister of Public Works were present at the head table. He said we must put in place a comprehensive long-term infrastructure development plan to support growth in Guyana and in this economy. He said that national development and expansion inevitably will create its own chaos for traffic jams which get worse, particularly on the East Bank Road and in our city. Madam Speaker, we in the APNE believe that as a nation, we need to confront the serious challenges together. We agree with that. But in identifying those challenges, the choices which we make in allocating resources must be sensible and practical. Let us therefore now, Madam Speaker, look at the budget and the provisions that have been made for issues in the area of infrastructure. I call this the infrastructure challenge. Madam Speaker, on the area of sea and river defense, at page 28, paragraph 450 of his budget presentation, the Honourable Minister identified the challenge as follows. He said this: Mr. Speaker, we are in a constant battle to protect and maintain the structural integrity of our sea and river defense structures and to develop sustainable shore zone management systems to contain the ravages of the ever-encroaching Atlantic Ocean. He said we have a porous or weak sea defense structure. We agree with the Minister, and we are only too concerned of the damage done to the livelihood of our citizens along the coastline of this country. Madam Speaker, only recently in Georgetown, we were reminded of the fragile state of our sea defenses, when all of Kingston and part of Main Street, including the residences of the President and the Prime Minister, were flooded. Madam Speaker, this is not just about the malfunctioning of one coker. It is about a pattern of neglect in this vital sector. That's what it is. Madam Speaker, in this budget, the Minister allocates $1.9 billion for sea and river defense. 143,392,000 to deal with critical works, while a heavy reliance is placed on a mangrove restoration program. Madam Speaker, this 5-year mangrove management action plan is not enough to satisfy the majority of Guyanese who live along the coast that are affected by this plan, if it is in place. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Minister will have to say to this House, he should have to say to us, how effective has this mangrove development plan been, and whether the black and or the red mangrove seedlings that have been planted so far are effective. Madam Speaker, what we are doing, we are predicating our sea defenses and the safety of our homestead on a mangrove development plan. This is what we do. This, in addition, just wait, man, it's not just. Madam Speaker, citizens can take very little comfort in the quality of what is known as critical works being done to shore up our defenses. And this is where the money has been allocated, $143 million for critical works. Madam Speaker, the quality of these works outside of the works supervised by the international lending agencies is generally of a very poor nature. Madam Speaker, I have some photographs here taken by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Stanley Ming a few months ago that shows the quality of work which is done on our sea defense on what they call critical works. These are parts of our sea defenses that have been damaged by overtopping of the Atlantic, or in some cases the sea defense itself have been washed away. But you know what they're patching it with here? Mud. Mud, Madam Speaker. This is in the area of Boston. These are photographs taken in the area of Zeeland on the west coast of Demerara. The same thing, they're patching it with mud. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, we have to be concerned when the safety and security of our homestead is treated in such a very casual manner. And this is why, or cavalier manner, my friends advises. And this is why we are concerned that the critical works to be done and the allocation of funds in this budget for critical works is far too little. It's far too small an amount of money for the challenge which we face by overtopping and flooding. Madam Speaker, in the area of air and river transport, there's more glaring evidence of poor choices that we make in the budgetary allocations in this sector. This sector, Madam Speaker, represents the economic and commercial life of Guyana. Madam Speaker, in 2012, the government expended amounts totaling $5.4 billion, the bulk of which went to mobilization advances for the Chedijagan International Airport expansion. This year, Madam Speaker, another $5.3 billion has been budgeted for this project. $240 million allocated to rehabilitate airstrips in regions 1, 2, 7, 8, and 9. Madam Speaker, let me here add the $4 billion made available for the completion of a 4-lane access road to the Chedijagan International Airport. Then we begin to see the vast sums of money spent on what this flagship project is all about. So you see, 2012, $5.4 billion. 2013, another $5.3 billion. And then it's showing another $4 billion for a road that goes to the airport, the 4-lane road. Now, this is not a road that is critical at this point in time. And this is why my contention is, Madam Speaker, that we have made bad choices in how we allocate funds. Bad choices. This is a road, of course, that has been stalled for a long time because we couldn't address issues such as the removal of the telephone posts. We couldn't address issues of the squatters that were on the road. We couldn't address issues of the pipe for GWI. Now, I cannot understand if a major project such as this is contemplated, why all of these issues are not dealt with even before we break ground. But so how will I told them for so long? I have to understand it. It is wrong. Something's wrong about that. Something smells about it. But, Mr. Speaker, we are doing all of this to create an aviation hub for flights to Africa. Which rationale, Madam Speaker? I am prepared to debate the Honourable Minister, and I am prepared to say now that that rationale cannot stand the scrutiny of an experienced staff. It's again fluff. That is the hub. Madam Speaker, if we were to factor in the developments that are taking place at the Suriname International Airport, they have been saying the same thing. And they have actually spent the money already and extended their airport and all of that. So we have missed the bus. And we still continue to pour money into this project when we can't even organize airlift for Guyanese residents and citizens who want to go to North America, to Canada, or the Caribbean. We're now going to Atlanta with some little group to see whether we can encourage another airline to come here. We still have to understand the reason why Delta pulled out, the full reason, but that is another matter which I shall have to discuss with the Honorable Minister of Transport. Madam Speaker, the hinterland is the Guyana El Dorado. And this is what the Minister, Robert Prasad, said. This is what Minister Irfan Ali said. That all of these persons who speak good things about Guyana, who came here, the border watchers, the people who speak about Kaitro Falls, all of those platitudes were about what the beauty of the interior, the beauty of the hinterland. All of them. I don't dispute that. Madam Speaker, from this said hinterland, Minister Rahul Prasad said to us that in 2011, 363,000 ounces of gold were declared. Almost $10.2 billion. That's public. But in 2012, he said 438,645 ounces of gold were declared. Wow. $13 billion. Sorry. The fact of the matter is that it's very long. It's been there long. Madam Speaker, you can see where the bulk of the money is going. It is going on the flagship projects, Amila Falls, the Cherijagan International Road, and other areas where the PBP, they are preparing to pump money into it for an election which they feel they can win. Madam Speaker, my colleagues here on this side of the House, Mr. Sidney Alikov, Mr. Don Hastings, Mr. Ronald Vulcan, Ms. Valerie Garrido, have all spoken about the inadequate allocation for roads in the hinterland, with a particularly sorry state of the road and bridges in Region 9. Madam Speaker, I want to here put on record that the announcement made by the Honorable Minister of Transport about a bridge across the Demrar Harbor is one which we fully support. We believe it is necessary that there be another bridge across the river. Madam Speaker, several months ago when the bridge had broken down, I said, look, we need to have a better bridge than the Maria. That's where the money should be spent. Not on the Maria. Build a bridge that will affect the lives of more people than a Marriott hotel. We didn't want that. Madam Speaker, the issue in relation to housing and the impact of the government policy on housing to the poor has been adequately dealt with, in my respectful view, by my colleague, Ms. Paula Lawrence. And you commend the approach. Madam Speaker, however, what I wish to say is that I agree with Ms. Lawrence that the price of land for a building of houses is still too high.
Very high.
It is still too high. And that the government keeping this price of land so high that they are riding on the backs of poor people in this country. We have to do something about this and make the land more accessible and cheaper. We have to look at, and this is the matter which I discussed with the minister, the question of building housing schemes and things of that nature. We had a discussion on that, and we need to see it done. Madam Speaker, in relation to water, this year, $2.7 billion has been spent to increase the level and quality of potable water in certain areas. But, Madam Speaker, I don't want to go into too much with this, but I would wish to again say to the minister that even though we spend so much money on water, there are people in Sophia until now, fields A, B, C, and E, who still don't have access to potable water. And in cases where they have access to it, it is only done for a very short period of time. Madam Speaker, there are people still in Dazzle housing scheme and Claremont Estate and still do not have access to water on a 24-hour basis. Madam Speaker, the water in Georgetown, I am willing to bet that the Honourable Minister will not put a glass under his pipe and drink that water. Madam Speaker, we have been asked by my friends on the other side of the aisle to dream. Yes. But I do hope that when the Honourable Minister goes to sleep, he does not dream about the youth from Builders Beyond Border and the pipe that they turned on and the brown stuff which he came out with. I hope he doesn't have a nightmare of that nature. I'll speak quickly on insofar as communication is concerned, because I have such a wide berth, Madam Speaker. I shadow these three ministers, so I do have to have some time. Madam Speaker, the allocation of radio frequencies by President Barjab was shortly before the meeting office. As President, in the manner and the numbers given to his party comrades is a wholly unacceptable. And this as an improper exercise of his discretion. Madam Speaker, I believe that the Speaker of the House, Mr. Trotman, was moved to describe that decision as obscene. This is the publication. He said it was an obscenity, and I agree with him.
That's his opinion.
Madam Speaker, much of the information about this matter is already in the public domain, and therefore I need not go back over it. But Madam Speaker, what I would wish to say is that the persons who have been issued with these licenses must be subjected to the same scrutiny which the persons who are now applying for license have been subjected to, and those who have been asked to reapply. The chairman of the board must act and be seen to be acting on this matter. Equity and justice demands it. Madam Speaker, I recognize the chairman and the board, everybody, if the cabinet. Madam Speaker, in this budget, the minister allocates $81 million to NCM. This is an entity whose allocation, Madam Speaker, we will not support. The Minister of Communication, who is the President, must release the report of the investigation into the wrongdoings of this entity. A matter over which the office of the leader of the opposition has written the President's office twice. And all we got back from it is that we are considering the report. We need the report. The public needs it. And I'm speaking in conclusion, I wish to say that this budget fails to address the true realities of Ghana in 2030. The choices made by the minister in allocating the resources of this country does not reflect the urgent priorities in physical infrastructure. Madam Speaker, the flagship projects, the Marriott Hotel, the CGI expansion and the Milo Falls, all suffer from one fatal defect: public buy-in. These projects, Mr. Speaker, were conceptualized in secret, and its execution still contains certain elements of secrecy. As such, Madam Speaker, I wish to reiterate APN's position on these matters. Bring all of the information on these projects to the National Assembly and let us have an open debate on this. Madam Speaker, while we appreciate the efforts made by government to share some classified information to a small group of persons, we believe that anything short of bringing the information to the Parliament is unacceptable. We must have a broad stakeholder involvement in the infrastructure development of Guyana. A revised national development strategy would be a useful starting point in this regard. For the foregoing reasons, Madam Speaker, I believe this budget has given the wrong priorities to allocating resources and requires rework. As such, I would not support this passage in its present form. I thank you.